Hello, welcome back. Okay, I know it's weird to say welcome back. For the people on Twitter, they don't know what we've really been going through on Instagram. But guys, you're welcome. Please, thank you very much for bearing with us as the technology moved us left, right, and center. But at last, we are here, and I can confirm that Raymond even has a microphone here on Twitter. Now, I don't know whether this will change any of the debates that have been had about which social media app is better at whatever, but I know the conversation the other side was spiraling into, in the comment section at least, into a debate about which operating system is better between the iOS and Android. But all of that is besides the point. The most important thing today that we're going to be discussing in our series on unsafe abortions is sharing experiences from us, the media, on reporting about unsafe abortions. And for guests, I have Raymond Mujuni, who is a journalist, award-winning. Well, he says he's awarded at times. I don't know what that means, but I know that he has multiple awards. So I'll introduce him as officially as a multi-award winning journalist. Raymond Mujuni, who is also the deputy executive director of the African Institute for Investigative Journalism, and myself, Daniel Lutaya. And I'll also be joined by Carlton Scovia-Nakamia, who is also an investigative journalist with BBS Telefina. We're talking about how we are reporting about unsafe abortions and our experiences in the field. Raymond, say that the much delayed hello to our listeners that we've been waiting for the past 1 hour while we fidgeted with the other app.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you for having me in a bit of a noisy place, but I'm sure that you'll be able to hear me perfectly. But thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation.
All right, thank you very much. Now, when I was preparing for this conversation, I went to Google and I Googled unsafe abortions Uganda. When I Googled unsafe abortions Uganda, I got a lot of data. There's a lot of reports even from the Ministry of Health, our own Ministry of Health, about unsafe abortions in Uganda. There are statistics from the World Health Organization. There are statistics from SEHAD. There are reports by SEHAD, various things that I stumbled upon while searching. But when I went to, Google organizes its content in those columns. It gives you general links, gives you news, gives you images, videos, and so on and so forth. So when I clicked on news, I got very little or actually nothing. No stories about unsafe abortions. I know that the stories are there, but I just didn't find them on Google. And that to me looked like an indictment on our part as journalists for not writing about this very important issue. Let's start there, Raymond. Why aren't we writing, at least according to Google, we are not writing enough, or we're not writing big stories about unsafe abortions? And yet the reports are there, the statistics, the data is there, but it looks like us journalists are just not wanting to go and sift through all of this information to write new stories out of. What do you think?
Thank you so much, Daniel, and also thank you to our listeners who are on the platform. I think the framing of the question is the problem. Are journalists not going out to do stories on abortion, or is abortion actually a taboo topic in Ugandan society? And I think that the latter is more, which is that a lot of our society in which the media operates treats abortions and discussions around them as a taboo topic, as it does treat many of the kind of gendered responses to the things that affect women and women's sexuality. You might already know that whilst we're still at the NBS investigations desk, we did an all-round investigation around abortions, and it's one of the most political moments we ever had as an investigations desk, because the Catholic Church, the Muslims, and the Anglicans were all threatening to tell companies to pull advertising from NBS for just starting a discussion around abortion. So there are a lot of institutional and societal pressures that the media has to undergo, particularly to report around issues like abortion, and it's such a political issue that you shouldn't treat very lightly. So maybe that explains why we don't have those stories.
And does it help that the statistics, that the data is, because when I was talking, I've done two sessions, two Twitter spaces about this issue, and I spoke to a lawyer first, and I spoke to a health practitioner, and they did certainly say similar things to what you're saying, but in their trades, that they are being failed by societal pressures and the taboo, the taboo blanket that has been uh, put over this issue of abortion, but also how can we as journalists call ourselves impartial, call ourselves bold and authoritative if we do not touch the difficult topics? Could be difficult for people in power, and I've in my experience I've found that um, many journalists would love to write about things that are uncomfortable for the government, for the people who are powerful, individuals and institutions of government that are supposed to be accountable to the public. But it's very few journalists who will touch a topic that is uncomfortable for the public themselves. What do you think, Raymond?
First of all, to set off right, the government of Uganda considers abortion to be illegal. So you're discussing something that, first of all, the government perceives to be illegal.
I've
But this is
been I've
something
been
that's
I've been lawyers here. I was with lawyers last week on the space, and they told me it is not illegal per se, but restricted by the law because in certain circumstances, like certain circumstances that they spelled out, like when a trained medical practitioner deems it fit, abortion is allowed. So it is not illegal. It's not a blanket illegality like murder or
yeah.
or rape. Yeah.
So well, as you can see, those are the very small, minute areas in which abortion can be permissible. In areas where it threatens the life of the mother, and it has to be given apparently by a certified medical personnel, has to actually approve that it has a direct bearing on the life of the mother. But what I was getting to was the issue of the hypocrisy within it. To date, the Ugandan government considers abortion to be illegal, but over 2,300 healthcare facilities in Uganda provide post abortion care. And the government of Uganda still sources money from donors for post abortion care, and it gets that money and uses it. That's about $25 per person, per woman going into a health facility. So in terms of the hypocrisy of our society, we run away from the fact that one, there are a lot many more pregnancies that are unwanted in Ugandan society, and there's a lot of research around that. I don't intend to get into that research. There's a lot of unintended pregnancy, which sometimes, of course, leads to abortion. There is unintended pregnancy, which leads to miscarriage because many times the people that are being asked to carry these babies to term, to 9 months, are incapable by their body size or even by their societal factors to carry the baby to term. But also, more importantly, at the end of the day, what abortion is a decision by the mother, the person carrying the baby, to decide whether they are willing to continue carrying the fetus or not. And once they've made that decision, the rest should really be up to them. And the reason that I think we'll end up in this discussion is because when we investigated this matter in 2018 and the religious institutions were up in arms, what we found was girls were still getting these abortions anyway, and they were now getting them from unsafe places or carrying or using unsafe methods of abortion to be able to secure abortions. So it's hypocrisy for society to say that there's no abortions in Uganda when you know very well that we have the highest teenage pregnancy rates on the books for any other place in the world. So where are all these pregnancies going? And that's something that we have to confront as society, to say that this is who we are as a society. As a society, we don't provide enough sexual and reproductive health information to children. We don't provide that sexual and reproductive health to even girls who are ready and willing to have sex, and that leads to unintended pregnancies, which sometimes lead to abortion.
Raymond, is it, there is a lot of challenges, as you have rightly mentioned, and I was with you on that Investigates desk, and I remember all these challenges that we faced while doing that abortion investigation. But let's just go on a micro level a little bit, because you and I have worked at macro, large media organizations, but I do understand that, at least from the most recent ACME report for last year, that radio is still king. Radio, FM radio, is still king in most of the hard to reach regions or areas in this country, and about 60 to 70% of Ugandans are still receiving their information on radio. And this is mostly in rural settings. We do know that there are very small radio stations all over the country. At least I know that every district in this country has a radio station somehow. It could be a community radio, all the sorts. Where should journalists start from? Because you and I have had the opportunity of working for media organizations that can say no to the Catholic Church, to the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. But where do those journalists, the ones that are actually serving the 70% of Uganda, how do they start writing about these issues?
Um, Daniel, the radios in Uganda don't operate in a separate infrastructure than the rest of the media. They operate in the same infrastructure that other media houses operate in. And that is that the success of a media house depends on how much advertising it's able to attract. And oftentimes for radio, that advertising is from local businesses and local business communities. And those local businesses, in many cases, are businesses of people who are front pews in churches, or who take up front roles in society. So even to be able to just attempt a conversation on abortion on radio, knowing very well that on Sunday you will be rejected by your church, or on Friday you will be rejected by your mosque, this takes a very high level of sacrifice for members within society. But like I said, this conversation has hypocrisy at the heart of it, because all these districts of Uganda have high teenage pregnancy rates, and all those pregnancies don't go to term. So what do they think happens to those pregnancies that don't go to full term? Where do they think that those fetuses go? Again, at the heart of this conversation is really who decides whether to keep a child or not. And if that decision is anyone that's not the mother carrying the child, anyone else who thinks that they should be involved in that decision is lying to themselves. So radios operate within the same environment as all of us do. And for them, it's even worse, because the radio personalities have to go to church on Sunday, and they'll be looked at badly or wrongly. They will.
Raymond, Raymond, are you still there? We seem to have lost you while you were still making that very important point about radio hosts not being away from the greater community. And these are things that we've really spoken about. And I've had, I have C. Peter Ichero here, and he has told me countless times, and he keeps saying, I think his phrase is always, we need to start using facts and science-based talk about these issues instead of emotions. Raymond, I think you are back. We had lost you there, but you are back, I believe. But while you go, there is a button on everybody who is on this Twitter space. There is a button on your, I think it is bottom right corner of your screen. There's a button there that has comments, the comment section. please go over there and write your questions or comments. There's a button at the bottom there. I don't know how it is, but on my Android phone, and I'm the one hosting, on my Android phone, it is on the bottom right. So please go over there and give us your question or comment. Now, let me read a few of those. Mr. Hashtag says this will forever be the best platform. Very simple and fluid. Thank you very much. I think Paul was with us on Instagram as we hustled with that. Chomugisha says it is important that the media stops demonizing safe abortion. A safe abortion saves lives compared to doing it in an archaic way, which ultimately leads to complications and death. And there again is another indictment on us there, Raymond. Is the media demonizing abortion, as Kemigisha says, Raymond? Raymond, are you there? Can you hear us? Raymond, you're still muted, so if you could please unmute and make sure that we can hear you. But if well, now I'm not sure if people can actually hear me. If everybody can hear me on the space, please give a thumbs up or something. Just give an emoji, something. Okay, I can see a thumbs up from Paul Webb, so I'm sure another one from Paul Webb, so I can be heard. So it's only Raymond that cannot be heard. Raymond, please unmute and confirm if you can hear us. Okay. Let me, because Twitter is quite easier than Instagram where we started, but I'm sure that yeah, I've just received a message from Raymond. His network keeps breaking. I think that's because and this is something that he warned us about. He said he was in a noisy place. And I'll also be waiting for Carlton Scovia and Akamia to join as Raymond tries to get better network connection. Let me read some more comments from you people. Senkungu Deo, who is at Zenk Deo, says I'm following and I'm liking it. Chintu, the fastest stuff at Fast African, says our country is extremely ethical and never will they understand the need to address the fatalities and post-abortion, in brackets, unsafe complications. He means unsafe complications, unsafe abortions. So there is more. There are more comments here from the Eastern man. Says abortion is wrong. It is equal to murder. You are killing a human being. As usual, I will ask later on. I will ask a member, one of the lawyers, one of the lawyers on this group, or maybe someone from SEHAD, to answer some of these questions, because some of them will not be media related questions, and any questions that will be touching issues to do with the law, I will not answer, because I doubt anybody believes me when it comes to the law, but I know that they believe me when it comes talking about journalism and writing stories. Raymond, can you hear us now? All right. It is certainly not Raymond's fault. I can see him struggling, connecting, this and getting off and so on and so forth. So I can see that it is really an internet connection issue, and that really has very little to do with Raymond and more to do with internet service providers and the infrastructure
Hi,
that they put all
Daniel.
over the country.
Are you able to hear me now?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you now. I was just blaming the authorities, the government, and internet service providers for our internet problems in some regions of the country, and telling the public that it is actually not your fault. And it is instead the fault of the internet service providers who just do not connect some regions as good as others. If you can hear us, Raymond, please complete your point. You are trying to make a point before we lost you there.
The point I was making is really that the media doesn't operate independent of society. In any case, many of the radios, which we would accuse of not having potent discussions around safe abortions, are radios owned by politicians fronted by churches, fronted by mosques, and that's the ecosystem in which you operate. So I'd urge many people to look at this as a structural problem, because it's a structural problem that churches have insisted. Churches like the Catholic Church, for example, still do not recognize any form of reproductive health. They don't recognize the use of condoms. They don't recognize any other form of protection. So, how are you going to have an advanced conversation on unsafe abortions with an institution that doesn't think that, you should have reproductive health services available to people?
All right. Well, that gives it very context there. Kemi Gisha had asked why the media. The media. She said it is important that the media stops demonizing safe abortion. A safe abortion saves lives compared to doing it in an archaic way, which ultimately leads to complications and death. I don't want to answer these questions because I'm a journalist myself, but here I'm just moderating. So, Raymond, there we go. Another jab thrown to us journalists, and she says we are demonizing safe abortions. Are we?
Again, I don't think that that's accurate. At least I belong to the Uganda Editors Guild, and many of the editors in that guild are very forward thinking individuals around reporting on sexual and reproductive health, because we see the problem. And the problem is simply that young girls are unable to complete school because they get pregnant. And they get pregnant because they're not allowed to make informed decisions around their sexuality. We've got this culture of hypocrisy that says people are not having sex except with their married partners, which is not true, which has been proven time and time again that people are having sex, whether it is forced or not. There's rape also happening. So the ecosystem that discusses sex also determines how the discussions on abortions, post abortion care should happen. So I beg that people start to tackle the problem as a structural problem. Many of the editors in newsrooms are very forward thinking individuals. They will create space for these conversations, even when they know that these conversations are taboo topics. Many editors know, for example, that they will not be called to church in the front rows because of the kinds of decisions they take on the kind of liberal society we should have. So take heart. In any case, platforms have been democratized. Traditional media is not the only platform. Now, platforms have been democratized. There's social media. If you want to have these conversations, please have these conversations on social media. But I warn you, you have to prepare yourself mentally for the structural fight back, because I, for example, cannot sit in at the front row of a Catholic church, because the church will say, look here, his views on abortion, his views on post-abortion care are not the views of the church, and therefore he's an outcast, he's a sinner, and that will be the perception that I'm given moving forward. And unless you're willing to live with that perception, then you're not willing and ready to have this kind of debate and conversations. Like I told you, we did the most extensive investigation on abortions, and I pray that they can share this link with people. That investigation talked to people who had been, one, raped by their relatives and had no other choice other than to get an abortion for it. We talked to people who had willingly, with their boyfriends, gotten pregnant, but they decided, look here, we don't want to have a baby yet, we're not prepared for it, and wanted to have an abortion. We talked to people who were married partners who decided, look here, I had this sex during marriage, but it produced a fetus that I don't want to carry to term. And I should be able to make a decision on getting an abortion. And governments, churches were telling people, look here, you can't make this decision. This is a societal decision. This is something that governments have to legislate. And it's sad, because when you see the dropout rates of girls from primary school education, secondary school education, all of that goes down to how we're handling abortion, how we're handling sexual and reproductive health information. In any case, that's really where the heart of the problem is, that there's just not enough sexual and reproductive health information going to sexually active young people.
All right, I'm going to read some more questions and comments from the public. Judith Nakalembe Susan says abortion is restrictive in Uganda and not illegal. Paul Webbs says even after slavery was abolished, journalists faced constant threats to their safety for daring to accurately report on injustices like lynching, foremost among them being Ida B. Wells. Could it be that journalists are being threatened by a certain pseudo hand not to report? Raymond, are we being threatened by a certain pseudo hand? I don't know what he means by pseudo hand.
Well, like I've given you the experiences. First of all, the very first people that will shun you if you have a report around abortion, the very first people that will shun you will be your family. And they will say you're promoting sexual immorality. And this is something we get a lot from society. People saying, discussion around access to sexual and reproductive health information for young teens who are sexually active. Many people think that that's immorality, but young people don't even know how to negotiate discussions around sex. They don't know how to negotiate their way out of sex. They don't know how to. They don't have adequate protections from the state. One of the most committed crimes in Uganda, away from assault, is defilement. How do you describe that? How do you understand that? The Uganda police, a government institution, produces a report that says, look here, defilement cases are high, rape cases are high, and who are the accused? Relatives of these young girls. So if young girls are incapable of negotiating sex, if young girls are incapable of being protected against their own in situations where they don't have control, and you're adopting this policy that says those young people shouldn't have access to sexual and reproductive health information, you're literally sacrificing them. And you've got to be a certain type of liberal. You've got to be a certain type of mind to look at that debate and say, you know what, we will cover this proactively. We will cover this with an active eye. We will have these conversations. Again, a lot of the people, even in the Ministry of Health, like I've told you, are forward thinking around abortions. They're just delayed by institutions like the churches. Every time that the Ministry of Health has drawn up regulations around access to sexual and reproductive health information, which would help teens, for example, navigate sex, teens navigate how to say no to sex, or even in instances where they're raped so that they can report people that have raped them, but also take health care. Every time that the ministry has drafted those regulations, they've remained on the book because the churches say, we will tell voters not to vote you if you pass those regulations because you're leading our society into sexual immorality. And that's the crisis, because churches continuously insist that community is going to be led into this sort of sexual immorality and refuse to see the numbers for it. There are a lot of young people who are engaging in sex. That's a fact. Take it. There are a lot of people engaging in sex that are not married. Take that fact. There are a lot of people who are married having sex outside of their marriages. That's a fact. So unless you're willing to blind yourself to the facts, the point is really that access to sexual and reproductive health information is important, and the media should increase its coverage around that.
Well, it looks like we are having a debate about immorality versus facts, feelings versus science. And the lines are clearly drawn, and everybody knows whose side we are on. And as a journalist, of course, we are sworn to facts. That's the basis of it's the building block of what makes a journalist. We are sworn to facts, but it looks like the society is being arm twisted by cultural and societal norms, but also by religious norms to accept alternative facts. Nowadays I hear that word a lot, alternative facts, because I'm just trying to avoid using the word wrong, but it is certainly, if the facts are clear, then anything else that is not those facts is wrong. But those that make the argument for them call them alternative facts. Now, let me read some more comments here and questions from the Eastern Man. Says abortion is wrong. It is equal to murder. You are killing a human being. That's the Eastern man. He wrote in the comments here, Daniel Mwanje, we should bring on board religious leaders to embrace and accept safe abortion as it saves life than people dying clandestinely, year in, year out. Chintu says our country is extremely ethical and never will they understand the need to address the fatalities in post-abortion complications. Paul Tech Services, how best can we stop abortion in schools? Yet our girls see abortion as the best way to hide pregnancy. Because in media, I don't think everyone is alerted. I do not, because in media, I do not think everyone is alerted. Daniel Mwanje says, but Mujuni is exaggerating Catholic Church's take on reproductive health issues. The church is slowly accepting some of the much needed reproductive health programs and products. That is Daniel Mwanje. Raymond, let's take those four and then I'll be back with a round of more.
I think I'll first start with the person who said that we live in an ethical society. Where are these ethics when people are stealing iron sheets for people in Karamoja? Where are these ethics when people are plundering day and night with this corruption that we see? If you want to have a proper debate around the ethics of the country, I mean, let's open it up and have that conversation. But are there ethics around keeping people away from safe abortions? And who determines those ethics? Who determines what's right and wrong? If an individual says, look here, I don't want to carry this pregnancy to term, many times, and there's research on this on the books, that the lives of young girls who carry these pregnancies to term end. I've told you, for example, the biggest dropout rates from school are girls who are get early pregnancies. Their lives change fundamentally from that point on because they have children, they are not allowed back into school, and when they're allowed back into school, they have to get into the economy so that they can get money to feed the child, and that takes them out of school life forever. You've got to be able to appreciate the level of debate, and you have to face it honestly. Public policy is not a space for people to come with their emotions. It's a space for which you have to look at the data and let the data inform the decision that you have. I've already told you this discussion that people have, people aren't having sex. The numbers are clear. Like I've told you, the numbers of teenage pregnancies recorded by the Ministry of Health are really high up there. The numbers of defilements recorded by the Uganda police are really high up there. So you have to run away from this wrong definition that people aren't having sex and start to appreciate that people are actually having sex. It's unprotected sex. Now, the reason it is because you're not providing sexual and reproductive health information at the young level. You're not decisions at an early age. And after that, you're not even accepting that media should report about things like this openly and widely so that we can have a constructive debate around them. So, in that regard, I find that, the debate around us being an ethical society, I think that to call Uganda an ethical society is really to stretch the use of the word ethics. In fact, the word ethics would be tired to be tagged to Uganda. But the other point that I want to respond to Daniel is, and I know many people get emotional when their religions are mentioned, but it's a matter of fact that the Catholic Church does not allow reproductive health information, does not allow even the basic form of reproductive health, which is a condom. The Catholic Church has a public policy against this. This is a matter of fact. So we have to confront these decisions. We have to confront these institutions and say, are you the institution of the future given the data that we have? Are you able to change the way in which you operate? I mean, for eons of years, we've been discussing about women empowerment, women taking up spaces. The Catholic Church has a public policy against women becoming priests. This is from the 80s. So you've got to be able to appreciate that some of the institutional structures need to change and need to change fundamentally. And there's data. Normally, when you're approaching a public policy debate, you have to first look at the data because the data then influences what decision you're going to take. The data that we have is really very clear that there's a lot of unsafe abortions happening. The data is also very clear that the government of Uganda, which says abortions are not happening, is still taking post-abortion care money from donors. So where are they using that post-abortion care money? Where are they taking it? But also, I've told you, many people in the Ministry of Health, many doctors are forward thinking around this matter. Many doctors have said if a person actually wants a safe abortion and they're capable and willing and ready to deliver it, they will do it. Because at the end of the day, the decision of having a child falls down to the person carrying the child to term. We should learn to disabuse ourselves of the idea that we have a say in a decision like that. We can have our own impressions about what someone does by saying, I will not carry this pregnancy to term. But to imagine that we'll get a say into how someone gets to live the rest of their lives, because once you have a child, that child is with you for the rest of your life. To get to say, to have such a huge say in someone's life, when you're best in Kabong, the person is best in Kasese, your circumstances are different, the economy is as already is, you can see what it looks like for young people. People have to be able to make informed decisions for themselves. And one of those informed decisions is people saying, I will not carry this pregnancy to term. And for me, like I've told you, the data that's there suggests that people are actually choosing to take abortions. Now you have to be ready to confront the discussion on, do you want those people to die whilst taking unsafe abortions, or do you want them to survive by taking safe abortions? If you don't approach it with an open mind, you end up in this case anyway. If you want your children to grow up with ethics, teach those ethics in your family, but don't carry those ethics and make them societal ethics. Don't carry those ethics and blanket them so that the entire society can carry them. Some people believe that the best way to discipline a child is by caning them. Other people do not believe in caning. We shouldn't carry the burden of people who cane their children to other people who don't believe in it. That's why we live in a society. And that's really what freedom is about at the end of the day. That we have a chapter 4 in which people have a choice that they can make, and one of those choices openly should be that I choose at this point that I will not carry this pregnancy to term. And that's really it.
All right. Thank you very much, Raymond. Carlton Scovia Nakamia is here, and she found the conversation getting heated. The comment section down here is also, it keeps flickering on. The lights keep going on here in the comment section. I can see over 27 comments down here from the public. But I want to bring in Carlton. There is a debate here, Carlton, about feelings, our society's feelings, society's religions versus the science and the facts. Now, whereas matters to do with unsafe abortions have been written about by experts, the statistics are clear, as Raymond says, the numbers are there, all the data is there. It looks like journalists are also getting into the mix and are failing to write about safe versus unsafe abortions, and even writing about safe abortions is not happening, because I told you in the start that I googled unsafe abortions Uganda. I didn't find an article for or against. It looks like journalists we are just saying anything to do with abortion, put it in a box somewhere in the corner of the newsroom and don't touch it. What has been your experience, Carlton?
Thank you very much, my brother Daniel. We don't. One of the hardest things to report about, in my experience, is anything. I mean, concerning the privacy of a woman. We know that already getting female voices into our stories is quite hard, much as we try our best. But how about investigating or dealing with a problem or an issue which women shy away from talking about? One time I attempted to do a story from the stretch between Makerere and Nakulabye. That stretch has a number of clinics doing abortions. Students flood those clinics to do abortion. Those clinics are licensed, and abortion, depending on your perspective, is good or bad, but it has to happen. For whatever reason a woman chooses to for whatever reason a woman chooses to conceive or accidentally get pregnant, really, if they take a decision to do abortion, then how do we ensure there is safe abortion? But many times we don't report those stories because women shy away from sharing their experiences and discussing the issue. Basically, that is the biggest problem.
All right. The biggest problem is women shying away and not sharing their experiences. And probably this falls into Raymond's earlier comment that nobody is living in a vacuum. We are all living in the same society. So I believe that for any woman who wants to talk to the press about her experience with abortion, safe or unsafe, she will first think twice because she knows that society will judge her harshly. Let me
Yeah,
go back
first
to
of
the
all,
comments.
Daniel, first of all,
Yes,
first
go
of
ahead.
all, of course, Raymond talked about the Catholic Church, which I subscribe to, and I mean, if a church doesn't allow you to use a condom, how about when your relatives or your friends see you on TV confirming or admitting that you aborted, you did abortion? I mean, it is regarded as killing, it is regarded as murder. So how do you confess to murder? It's basically not easy to have that woman who aborted speak to you to share the experience, even when post-abortion care has a lot of issues. Very many women have got complications after abortion. So there is need to streamline that post-abortion care and see how do women access the services, because they need it. There is an urgent matter, but how do we ensure that they get it?
All right, and what is how about editors, Carlton? Just tell us about because you've worked in various newsrooms, just like myself and Raymond. What about editors, the editorial policy teams, and the editorial, those senior journalists that we are always reporting to? Is it an issue that they is it a story idea that they will welcome with open arms, or is it something that they will think? They will tell you to probably hold your horses.
Yes, I agree. I agree. The newsrooms, of course, we've not reported much about abortion, but it is a story that, uh, in my perspective and the editors I've worked with, it is a story they welcome. The only challenge is every story has to be humanized. So, who are you going to speak to? Who is willing to share that story? Certain stories really can't be shared anonymously, or yes, we can write anonymous stories, but does it really bring out the gist of the matter? So editors are welcoming, but also we've not given it much effort to push and push and see that, you know what, this story must make it. Yeah, there is some laziness.
All right, thank you. There are, now there are about 30 comments, so I'm just going to read a few of them and then open the floor for plenary for everybody else to be able to say something. I cannot say if I'll be able to accept requests from everybody because I can see many people want to weigh in, but I'll try to accept as many as I can. And I'm going to ask my guests, Raymond and Carlton, to just have a pen and paper to write the questions and comments when people give them. Omwenengo says, those who argue about safe abortion really forget that adults indulge in NACs. How NACs lead to pregnancy, the safest abortion is actually abstaining. If pregnancy, the safest abortion is actually abstaining if pregnancy is a result of rape or defilement. If the pregnancy is dangerous to the mom, that can be acceptable. Omara Ronald, most girls are shattered. Um, but I think by the people responsible for their pregnancies. Morris Kevin, official, abortion is murder, full stop. That's his comment. Okay. Chom Gisha, it's important that the media stops. Okay, I think I read that one already. Senkungudeo, the rigidity of faiths that don't give room to other minding groups, but keep being dictating than giving room to listening to minds of fourth generation rising, especially the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church doesn't listen to anyone at all, mpaka when it's of no more. All right. Irene says biblically abortion is murder, whereas conventionally it is not. Moses Okiro, the poverty level in this country is alarming. Recently, some regions were at 60%. How then do we expect some of these unsafe practices to end? Unemployment is high for young people. Education is becoming unaffordable. Moses Okiro says that. Judith Nakalembe, due to the restrictive legal environment, women and girls are compelled to risk their lives and health by seeking unsafe means like drinking jik, inserting cassava sticks to enlarge the cervix, which causes overbleeding and infections leading to maternal deaths. Judith continues, says the 2006 National Policy Guidelines and Service Standards for SRHR provide for access to abortion services in instances of severe mental illnesses threatening the health of a pregnant woman, severe fetal abnormalities, etc. Ntale David says, when you talk about abortion, look at the person you are killing and ask yourself, should a mother have a right to kill her child? And what point does this right become null and void? In my view, there are circumstances where mother and child have to separate for her to survive. Okay, that's entirely David. Lots of questions and comments here. Most, of course, talking about the legalities and what exactly the law says. I have Peter here asking for the microphone. I'm going to give Peter an opportunity, and everybody else who wishes to have a say on this, please request for the microphone, and I'll give it to you, and you'll be able to ask a question or comment to my guests, or give a comment about the matter of how the media reports about abortion or any other topic that we've discussed. Peter, over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Daniel, for hosting us, and thanks to the panelists. I think he raises a very important conversation about, do we use evidence to make public decisions? And I think that is critical. But the challenge that we have is that for a bigger part, when you make emotional arguments, when you make moral arguments, you are not put to test to show evidence for it. So you can make all the alarmist statements that are moral in nature, and no one will ask you for evidence, because you'll go back to other arguments that are moral in nature. And so at the end of it, you'll get away with statements that actually do not have evidence. But if you notice, most of the cases of unsafe abortion are because of unwanted pregnancies. Most of the unsafe abortions arise from unwanted pregnancies. And the reason we have a lot of these unsafe abortions, unwanted pregnancies, is because young people are not able to access sexual and reproductive health services that they would ordinarily need. And this is also an indictment on government, because government has not actually invested in the provision of sexual and reproductive health services and commodities for young people. They have left this burden to international organizations and development partners. But locally, in terms of our local contribution towards resources for sexual and reproductive health services, it is a minimal contribution. And so if we want to respond to the challenge of unwanted pregnancies, we need, as a country, to take a deliberate decision to ensure that when young people need information, they should be given. When they need the services, they should be able to access them. And that, of course, takes me to the argument about, do we really need sexuality education in this country? You know that is a very controversial discussion in this country. And I think it is one area as we talk about unsafe abortions that we also need to look at. That do we actually provide sexuality education to young people so that they take decisions knowing that this, whatever they will do, will have consequences. So it is important that government invests one in the provision of resources for sexual and reproductive health, but also we need to open an honest conversation about sexuality education. We're not talking here about sex education, we're talking about sexuality education. And so we need to be able to have those conversations, not just in private spaces, but also in public spaces like schools, so that people know that when this happens, I must be able to take responsibility, that I should be able to do A, B, C, D so that I don't get pregnant when I actually do not need to get to that point. That's my submission.
All right, thank you so much, Peter Icheru, on that great submission. Raymond has to leave us to go for some engagement, so I'm going to ask Raymond to give his final remarks on this, and most importantly, I'm going to ask you, Raymond, to talk to the journalists, because there are many young journalists on this forum who look up to you. Talk to them. What should they do to make sure that they inform, to transform the society?
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. And thank you so much for everyone who's been on this space. There are three ways to confront this as a policy debate. Number one is to acknowledge the facts that we have. The Uganda Demographic Health Survey, the most recent released, says that the sexual debut age for young people is 12. So children as young as 12 are exposed to and having sex. And that's important to acknowledge because this is government data which has been collected. Now, if people as young as the age of 12 are having sex, what do you need to do? One, you need to get into a space that provides those people with information about and on sex. Some people, for example, at that age think that having sex standing up doesn't lead to pregnancy. Some people think that, washing yourself with detergent after having sex will lead to no pregnancy. Some young boys don't even know at that age that their erection is capable of producing a pregnancy. So provide that kind of information to young children so that they are competent and aware of the decisions they're making around sex. It doesn't make our society immoral. It just gives them the choice to know that this is the kind of information, this is the decision I'm getting into, and these are the outcomes. Number two is to approach the question around teenage pregnancies. A lot of these teenage pregnancies, which are carried to term, do not have any formal support from government or even from this very society that says that the abortions are illegal. So, can we have a committal from government to say any girl that gets pregnant during their time in school will be paid for by government, their school fees, their child, if they are born, will be given social care, because then it would make the conversation on or around the abortion a very healthy and important conversation to have. But number three is to get into the conversation on decision making. Who gets to decide to keep or to let go or terminate a fetus? Many of the people having opinions in this conversation wouldn't know what a fetus looks like at 6 months, wouldn't know what a fetus looks like in 2 weeks. They don't even know what a fetus looks like in a year or so. So we are incapable. We lack the kind of knowledge to have this kind of debate. And we would only get that knowledge if we allowed for our media houses to have a free flowing set of information. Now, the reason that people are keeping this information is that this information would make them lose the debate. This information will take away their centers of power. And it's important that journalism speaks truth to power. We often think that power is only government. Government on this particular matter is being held at ransom by churches, being held at ransom by mosques. And I've told you, I'm not making this up. I've shared a link. People can go and watch that story and see what we found in our investigation. And we talked to all of these stakeholders in play. So my parting shots for young journalists is keep pushing the bus. Listen to the data. interrogate data, interrogate evidence. There's a lot of government data around sexual and reproductive health information. You have the Uganda Demographic Health Survey, you have reports that are released. You know, Daniel, people don't even know that 800 abortions are procured in Uganda daily. I am not talking about monthly, I'm not talking about annually, 800 abortions daily. So you must confront this decision. Of the 1.6 million children born in this country, more than 60% of those are born to people who are below the age of 18. What does that data tell you? So you take your emotions out of the debate, and then you have a chance to have a critical, life saving debate. You have a chance to make policy. There's no evidence to suggest that in countries where children have gotten sexual and reproductive health education, that those countries have become more immoral. In any case, in countries where people have access to sexual and reproductive health information, the age, the sexual debut age, has grown from 12 to 18, and those are Nordic countries. So, sometimes it just baffles you how we make policy in this country. But in any case, for the journalists, keep putting in your pound, keep working so hard, keep interrogating, keep bringing these facts to light. You know, facts are stubborn, even if people sit on them. Uh, the facts will always show up. And for people who oppose abortions, please understand that that decision is only for the person who is carrying the pregnancy to term. They are the only ones who know what it means to carry that pregnancy to term, and they are the only ones who are going to bear the consequences of what happens when that pregnancy arrives at term. And that's a very important and healthy thing to know. You know, in Uganda, we don't know when to mind our business. We don't know what is our business and when to mind it. And I'd like to tell the people in this space that a pregnancy is the business of the mother, and the person who should mind that business is the mother, and by extension, the father that chooses to be present for that child. So, those are my concluding remarks on this subject matter. I'm sorry I have to run. I had a scheduled meeting at 5. I thought that would have done this between 3 and 4:30, but I think that we'll extend into that. Thank you so much, Daniel, for having us, and I look forward to many more of these conversations.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And I just want to give you guys some information. And this is a 2021 study by the Makerere University School of Public Health. And that shows that 46% of pregnancies in 2021 were unintended. They interviewed women from all over the country, from 15 sub-regions of Uganda, and 46% say they did not intend to have the pregnancies at the time of the study. And that should tell us that there is actually a problem of unintended pregnancies in the country, and we need. I'm glad that this space is one of those that are trying to have this conversation and to make sure that this conversation continues, because the people that are on this space are the ones that vote the members of parliament. The people on this space are the ones who are going to become members of parliament in the future, that can change public laws and policies and so on and so forth. And therefore, it is important for us as the people of Uganda to start this conversation, because when we started, us for the space, I'm gonna ask you to continue the conversation thread. There's the comment section of that tweet that announced this Twitter space. Continue with that conversation. The hashtag is safe and legal care, and this is a series. We'll continue with more of these. This week we'll have another one, and I'll be communicating when and who we will be hosting. But thank you very much for having this, for accepting to join our space and having this conversation. Thank you very much, Carlton Scovia Nakamia, in the midst of all the technical difficulties. Thank you so much for accepting to join us, and thank you very much to Sehad, to the doctors, like Dr. Otile has been here from the time we started this spaces series. Aran Stabaruka, I see you. Ricardo, I can see you. Elijah Tudiaguman, I thank you for being with us for the entire session. and everybody who has been on this space. And I would just like to implore you to continue the conversation online, but also in your own spaces, in your own families. Start talking about these issues, because if we don't, then we have a whole generation of young people that could get destroyed. Their lives could get shattered because they did not hear about sexual and reproductive health information, but also that they didn't hear about safe versus unsafe abortions. My name is Daniel Lutaya. I'll see you this week at a time that I will tell you, and have a good evening. Bye bye.